You've heard the protest songs of the Vietnam War, music that demanded change, challenged power, and helped define an entire generation. But what happens when a generation stops believing that change is possible? In the late 2000s, as the American economy collapsed, something strange happened to music. Instead of rage and rebellion, the charts filled with party anthems, songs about dancing, drinking, and forgetting tomorrow all together. This music wasn't optimistic, it was escape. We call it Recession Pop, and understanding it explains not just the music during the Great Recession, but why so many Americans stopped believing in the future at all. And it all evolved as a cultural response to economic despair and the death of prosperity in the United States. To understand recession pop as a cultural phenomenon, it's important to recognize the trend of culture mirroring politics throughout much of modern history. A great example of this comes from the tumultuous times of the 60s and 70s in the wake of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Kennedy's assassination shattered the post-war myth that the world was stable and improving. So, in the absence of the internet, people sought community in the only way they knew how, through music. Movements like the Black Panthers, the hippies, and changing politics played a large role in deprogramming people from the Matrix. The real cultural shift came from the Vietnam War itself. Started in 1955, the Vietnam War raged on during the presidencies of 5 presidents: Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, and Ford. Public perception of the war continuously declined throughout the years. Many people claimed the Tet Offensive was responsible for the sharpest decline due to the realization that the enemy would fight as hard and as long as it took. One thing's for sure, by the time the Watergate scandal occurred, the war was going to end at some point soon. One of the most iconic songs to come out of the Vietnam era is Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Too many people think this song is patriotic, when, in fact, it's an anti-war protest song. To make a long story short, the Vietnam draft forced poor people to fight the rich man's war. Those with enough money could choose to go to college to avoid the war, but the poor didn't have that choice. Fortunate Son shows how America has never cared about its people, just the rich ones, through lines such as, "I ain't no senator's son, I ain't no fortunate one," and "Some folks are born, silver spoon in hand, Lord don't they help themselves, but when the tax man come to the door, Lord the house looking like a rummage sale, yeah." Creedence pinpointed the reality that the rich can easily avoid war, and they try their hardest to avoid the taxes that the rest of us have to pay. It's always been the rich against the poor. As music laid the groundwork for future cultural revolutions to occur, perhaps the least analyzed of the ones mentioned is the cultural shift in the wake of the Great Recession in 2007. Capitalism brings out the absolute worst in people, especially those who are power hungry or money hungry. In 2007, a housing bubble built on over-leveraged subprime mortgages collapsed. Those whose house prices dropped below what they owed on their mortgage simply abandoned them. Due to the reckless behavior of big banks and lenders, a domino effect culminated in the most significant destruction of wealth since the Great Depression. The resulting cultural shift, much like the assassination of Kennedy, shattered the myth of the American dream. An entire generation of Americans realized they would be the first Americans in 100 years unable to live a better life than their parents. Since then, we have only seen this problem grow bigger. In the middle of this existential crisis, young people experienced a cultural mindset shift away from the protection of the future into the joys of the present. If there's no future, why should we live like there's one? So people started to live with joy more often. They did what they wanted to, when they wanted to. There was no time like the present. As this cultural shift matured, recession pop fueled and largely led this new cultural movement. Songs designed for clubs and parties dominated the charts. Homeownership collapsed, stable careers disappeared, and long-term planning felt pointless. During the Great Recession, the club replaced the future. In the club, we could be whoever we wanted for a few hours. Foreclosure signs and unemployment headlines were replaced with neon lights and music videos. This played out in the structure of recession pop songs. Repetitive lyrics centered on a night out. Accusations of millennial cringe are largely valid, but when it comes to the club in the late 2000s and early 2010s, millennials experienced a freedom to be ourselves that generations before and after us won't ever get. For one night at a time, we didn't burden ourselves with the disastrous realities and material conditions of the country and our future. We built community through music and dance, and our lives going forward have embodied that whimsy. The first mention of recession pop comes from an article in the Irish Independent in 2009, in which Lady Gaga was interviewed about her 2008 album, The Fame. This album skyrocketed through the charts with songs like Poker Face, Love Game, and Just Dance, in which the lyrics, "Just dance, it's gonna be okay," perfectly encapsulate the emerging recession pop movement. Lady Gaga's album came out in the midst of the early Great Recession. Then came dance pop anthems from Rihanna, Katy Perry, Miley Cyrus, Usher, David Guetta, Pitbull, and the queen of recession pop herself, Kesha. Also very influential in the musical shift of this time was hip-hop's Young Jeezy through his album The Recession. Across genres, pop, hip-hop, and EDM, the message was the same. Live fast, feel good, and don't look to the future because it will never exist. If I had 3 songs that I see as quintessential recession pop songs, they would be TikTok by Kesha, Last Friday Night by Katy Perry, and Just Dance by Lady Gaga. Now that we understand how music reacts to the political moments of the time, how does culture interact with this music? Well, during protest movements of the 60s and 70s, the music announced to the people that the system was broken. With recession pop, it said, yeah, the system is broken, but tonight we're going to ignore it, dance through it, and forget about it. 50 years ago, people thought we could change the system. During the Great Recession, they realized the system could never be changed, so we might as well enjoy our time here while we can. In simpler terms, recession pop was escapism. But recession pop and the carefree attitudes of the early 2010s slowly died. As many of us have learned in our lives, you can only escape for so long. Eventually, reality pushes back. By the mid-2010s, student debt exploded, housing became functionally unattainable for millennials, and politics became unavoidable again. Perhaps 2016 was the end of our escapism, as Trump was elected and music again reflected the politics of the time. Recession pop and dance music waned and were traded for music filled with sadness and nihilism. For a time, COVID brought back many themes and musical styles that we first loved during the Great Recession. This revival of upbeat dance pop turned into Brat Summer and then rebounded back to sad music. You can call recession pop dumb, cringe, or whatever else, but it will always be an authentic reflection of the lives we lived and the future we are living in now. It was a mirror that showed us that the American dream wasn't real, and instead of revolting, we danced. Maybe we should have revolted. For millennials, in a world where personal expression is often despised, whimsy and dance are our resistance. Just like protest songs told people the truth in the 60s, recession pop told the truth in the 2000s, just in a different way. Recession pop should have been an even larger alarm bell than the Great Recession was. It's one thing to fight power, but when the kids stop fighting back and try to escape, that's when you know you're cooked. If recession pop was the sound of pretending everything was okay, then the music of today is the sound of finally admitting it's not.